how's it going, everybody? Just wanted to wish you a happy Sunday. Hope you're having a great day. Today's topic was going to be one that helps people distinguish between certain personality disorders and understanding a little bit about one part that crosses over several personality disorders, which is fears of abandonment. Sometimes clients will come to me, or even, I'll be talking with other colleagues and we'll be talking about the idea of fears of abandonment. So first I wanted to go through and actually explain this and then explain how it may come into a session, or you may see it, a person may explain experiences that let you know they're having these fears. So fears of abandonment go beyond just the normal being afraid someone's going to leave you. Lots of people may experience that either through I've done something wrong, or I think I've done something wrong, or I'm afraid that they think I've done something wrong, and fear that someone will leave you. But leaving you is nowhere near that deep rooted fear of abandonment. Notice that that's a very serious word. When someone says, they were abandoned, it means like they were left, stranded without anything, totally almost rejected, dropped. The other person, put them down and ran from them. And if you talk to some of the people who have these feelings, they'll actually describe it that way, that they feel like they was stranded on a desert island and left to fend for themselves while the other person took off and ran away from them. A lot of times people will see, since this is one of the biggest and most significant criteria for borderline personality disorder, a lot of people, when they realize that they have a significant fear of abandonment, they start immediately to think, oh no, I must have BPD. I must have borderline personality disorder. I strongly encourage everyone to first, if there's a question about that you need to seek professional help. You need to get with someone who can give you a neutral, reflective type of look on things that's also wrapped around with professional understanding and training. Because the thing is all of the personality disorders are diagnosed based upon a cluster of criteria. You have to have more than just one of the criteria. It is possible for somebody to have a fear of abandonment because they've had some traumatic things happen in their life, and they may not have any particular personality disorder. They may have, trauma, and there are specific designators for just trauma. And sometimes that fear may be implanted by, traumatic childhood events, or even situations that to that person seem traumatic, like, loss of a caregiver when they were very young, and that person in their life, it may not even been their parent, but it was very, very significant person in their life that they lost them for some reason, either death, illness. It could be even something that was temporarily, like the person got sick, went in the hospital. They themselves got sick, went in the hospital. There's a lot of trauma, and I've discussed this in other videos, that each person's trauma is particular to them, how they cope with it, that makes it a trauma for them specifically. Back to this fear of abandonment, though, it is possible that you could see it come up in an avoidant personality disorder. You could also see it come up in a borderline personality disorder, or you may even see that come up in a dependent personality disorder. It has lots of different places in personality disorders. And the two that I want to specify and show you the difference in, so that you get a little bit better understanding, is the difference between borderline personality disorder and avoidant. In both of these, you might have problems with fears of abandonment, and everyone has a different level of how much they have. The trick is how they express themselves. Remember, someone who has avoidant personality has such strong anxieties and fears of being rejected, and they won't even, unless they're really sure that they're going to be accepted by you in a group, or accepted by you in a situation, they may be reluctant to even talk to you. They will come across sometimes as shy, timid, elusive, may not want to speak. Don't think that everyone who has avoidant personality disorder is going to be like a nervous Nelly, and like, oh, you see them. They might walk around, talk, look perfectly normal to you. It's all what's going on inside their head, though, that makes them a little bit more distant, because they have a preconceived fear that you're going to reject them or abandon them. That's different than when you look at borderline personality disorder. So with borderline personality disorder, that fear of abandonment comes out and expresses itself differently. So as where someone who has avoidant may just not talk to you at all, someone with borderline personality disorder, that's not an initial fear in a relationship. They will not have that come out and keep them away from you. It may have them react to you differently. Someone with BPD may latch onto you quickly. They may lose those boundaries and step right over them and go right into sharing stuff with you that is inappropriate for someone you just met, or that you only have a casual or acquaintance relationship with. They may do things to basically pull you in and make you be a close person. In other words, it's not like it happened naturally. They're trying to fit you into that peg where you are that close person. And then later on in the relationship, the way that these things express it is the avoidant personality disordered individual, the one who has that diagnosis, they may be very careful not to hurt or offend anyone, because, again, that fear of abandonment is there. As where someone with borderline personality disorder may go as far as to be so afraid of it happening, they make it happen. And you think, oh gosh, here we go. Well, TEX, what are you talking about? That doesn't sound logical. Another video for you that I have to do is how to think differently than what you think. If you can separate yourself for a second, though, this fear, and I've talked about it before, is so great that the person will actually go on ahead and break up with you so that you don't break up with them. Now, the consequences for that may be severe, and they may immediately regret doing it. But remember, we're talking about clusters of symptoms. And for someone with BPD, they will be very impulsive and rash in their thinking. They won't see way off in the future. They won't do all those things. They immediately get hit with that fear, and then they immediately do whatever it is they can do to relieve that fear. It's kind of like if you got your foot caught in a grate as you're walking, and it sunk in. Now, if you're able to immediately calm down and realize what you did, not to move your foot suddenly. In order to get it out, you have to calm down and pull a certain way so that you don't hurt your foot. But if your fear was so great that your foot's going to be hurt, that you snap it out sideways, you would be the one who actually broke your foot, pulling it out, instead of just being calm and relaxing and pulling it out of that sunken spot. And see how that happened? Now think of that in the same way with people. You get into a spot where you're so afraid you've made a mistake. And if you have BPD, you've made a mistake and you're so afraid that the person's going to see that mistake and then dump you, reject you, leave you, that you just go on ahead and do everything you can to get rid of them. Someone with avoidant personality disorder, on the other hand, though, might do something and suddenly realize that they've done something that they're afraid. So they immediately start, people pleasing and apologizing and begging for forgiveness before you even know what happened, or desperately trying to hide this thing, or doing whatever they can to keep the situation contained, because that anxiety is so massive in that individual that they're trying to keep those fears down. Are you starting to see how they come out differently? There are individuals in this world who have fears of abandonment who have neither one of these diagnoses. I mentioned dependent personality disorder, and that may be an individual who is so needy and graspy for you to tell them what to do, that their biggest fear is that one day you're going to leave them, and they actually end up doing the exact kinds of behaviors that may cause that to happen. See, very much like, notice how all these things have very similar characteristics and behaviors. You're looking for a cluster, though, and it's more than just one behavior. So if you're professional diagnosing, you know to look for all the things in this cluster. It's not just one. And the same way as if you're a client or a patient, and I have this one thing, so it must be that. No, it's a cluster. And you also need someone to reflect and talk with you and go through it and find out, what are all the symptoms? When did they begin? See, the other important thing is I tell people, did your problems begin after a significant life event, which is the trauma causing things, and they start to unfurl? Or do you just remember always having that problem? Were you always anxious, worried? Were you always clingy, or were you always afraid of people leaving? Or did you always, set things off to make people get away from you as a way of you not having to deal with them leaving you? Did you dump people first your whole life? Jumping from relationship to relationship. See, those are the characteristic behaviors that you look for in someone who has BPD, not avoidant personality disorder. Someone with avoidant may not even have any of those relationships, or have very few, because they are so timid about making those connections that they don't get in the same situation. And then the reaction. See, the reaction of somebody with avoidant personality disorder is much more likely to be, people pleasing, scared, and I'm sorry, and I don't want this to happen, and biting at the nails and going off the deep end to stop this thing from happening. Whereas someone with BPD might go into a rage because you abandoned them. So that anger goes into massive overloaded rage that is in no way proportional to what's going on with the thing that's happening. So I hope that helps you understand a little bit how abandonment, fears of abandonment, play out in some of the personality disorders and non-personality disorders. And if you have further questions, please, by all means, send them in. I would love to talk about anything you want. I try to bring up stuff that was brought up during the week. Hope that helps you, and I hope you have a great Sunday.